Never stop chasing your dreams.
And never say never.
Great job on the Kiowa show. Really good.
Ew.
Yeah.
That's a great show.
The reason I invited Suzie Fox on the show,
Mhm.
we've had her on before, and she is one of the owners and operators of the Rainbow Stores, which again, love their merch, love everything about them.
Yeah, they have great stuff.
Yeah, and one of the things I noticed in her post is that she's very much got her finger on the pulse of what's going on politically with trans people and their healthcare and their rights over here. We're at like this very intricate time, you know, like there's an election coming up, and I just want people, there she is, great. I just want people to understand a little bit uh about what they're voting for, you know, like what's on the line here, especially, you know, because we have an LGBTQ following and T is in there and they should know, but
Oh, yeah.
it's also LGBT rights as well. So let's get Suzie on and see if she can shed a little light on all this garbage, all this garbage that's been going on. Just what we need, right? More politics. Always something. Doesn't even matter where you live anymore. Like there's just
Oh,
something,
no.
you know, like we were saying today over dinner, like Jesus Christ, climate change, wars, you know, elections, like everything is happening like all at once. And
Yeah.
what I'm thinking is that it just means that people are so divided on everything. Oh, there's no such thing as climate change. Oh my God, the world's on fire. You know, like that kind of stuff. Suzie,
Hey, hi.
hi, my
Hello.
love. How are you?
I'm really well. How are you?
I'm good. I was explaining to JD and our viewers, because we started recording a little bit early, but I was saying how taken I am with your posts and the level of knowledge that you have about what's going on and why this upcoming election that we're having over here in the UK on July 4th. So funny. Like America celebrates their independence from Britain and Britain's having a vote on the exact day.
I was thinking that when you said that.
It's a lot. But Suzie, so far, and don't get me wrong, I see a lot of posts. And I think because I've curated a feed that's mostly queer, you know, so it's like LGBTQ, and I follow a lot of happy trans people. Like I don't like the kind that are sad and upset and doom and gloom, you know, like I've really curated a great feed. So I've seen a lot of posts, but the posts from you make me understand what's at stake better than anybody else, because everybody else maybe just does a lot of you know, kind of stuff, but I wanted to know more about the facts, and that's what I find in your posts, because sometimes I feel like I'm not a person that watches um the parliament question and answers, or you know, that kind of stuff. So I don't even watch BBC News anymore, like you know, like because I don't understand a lot about government, but I know that we have viewers and listeners from the UK. So what I was hoping was that you could, okay, I see your paw.
She's shaking the cat.
I know, she was reaching around to hit the escape button. So what I was hoping was that you could just, you know, in the clearest, simplest manner, tell us why we need to get the Tories out.
That's the thing, isn't it? We've got to, yeah.
And why? And why? Like, what are they trying to do?
Okay, so I think, well, first of all, thank you very much for that really lovely, kind words you just said. I think for me, it's been a long journey of being quite an activist. I think I started off being quite shouty, and then realized that I didn't. You can't just shout. You've got to explain.
Yes.
Because
yes.
all you ever do is shout. Is you shout into the bubble, and it bounces back off the inside of the bubble, and it affects other people. So if you start to try and explain to people why something's important, then at least you're not making everybody angry. You're educating them, and I think that's really important.
That is key. And you know, one of the things, and like I just said to JD earlier, it's going on everywhere. You know, the fight it's not limited to one area, one country. It's really everywhere. And trans rights and healthcare are on the table, you know, like, and the last thing we want to do is take a step backwards from the strides that we have made. And we hear about it, you know, you hear a little bit about it, but we don't know enough about what it means if it happens.
Yeah.
Like if you can't get your hormones, your, you know, estrogen, your testosterone, like, and I know I'm saying it wrong, it's estrogen here, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, interesting.
estrogen. But like I know that like without that, that's a setback for every trans person. And we already have issues with healthcare being provided. So if it's not even available, like that affects a lot of people. And so what we're voting for are you know, the trans rights, LGBTQ rights, but it's also the healthcare that's involved on the back end.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's, look, I'm very much a person that believes that we go into things as a community, as a whole. So I'm trying not to just look at these things from a trans perspective, although obviously that's the group. I mean, I identify as queer and trans. So for me, the whole community is important, and how the different parties are coming to the whole community. So how they're talking about conversion therapy for kind of gay people is just as important as how they're talking about what they're going to do with trans people. But the fact is that this election, probably more than any other, is an existential point for the trans community. And obviously in America as well, come November, but in the UK at the moment. And the reason that we say that is because I mean, God forbid, but should the Conservatives get back in, it's staggeringly unlikely given the polls, but we've had staggeringly unlikely results in the past.
Right.
So
you can't take it for granted.
We can never ever write them off, and we can never ever become complacent. So anybody who's out there thinking, oh, this is a foregone conclusion, Labour is way ahead in the polls, I'm not going to bother to vote. No. Every vote counts, every time. And even if you're in a constituency where there's a significant Labour majority or there's a significant Lib Dem majority, you need to get out and vote, because every single one is important. Yeah. So let me go through a few things as to what the Conservatives have promised, because as you would expect, I've been quite up to date with what they're trying to do. So it genuinely is an existential threat to the trans community and the non-binary community. I think so. I've got some notes. So in their manifesto, they have said that they will rewrite the Equalities Act 2010 to make it protect biological sex rather than gender, which means effectively that trans and non-binary people will have no protections at all. Now, we waited, the Equalities Act 2004 and the Equalities Act 2010 were the two things that gave us rights. They gave us protections. They gave us employment protections. They gave us health protections, all of these things. Suddenly that will be removed. Now, a lot of people will say that the Equalities Act 2010 does already allow some organizations to discriminate against trans people, and that's true. But those are exceptional circumstances, and they have to prove why they are discriminating. It might be a women-only refuge, where it's a rape refuge, in which case you can understand why in some instances that might be difficult.
Right.
But what this will do is it will make that the default. So in other words, they won't have to prove, they won't have a high bar to prove why they discriminate. They will be allowed to discriminate.
Right.
So all of the protections, everything will be gone.
Oh my
They're
God.
they're going to deny non-binary people legal recognition by stating that people can only have one sex in law. They're going to implement the CAS report, which has already been completely every trans healthcare and a lot of the cisgender healthcare organizations have already said that the CAS report there's so many holes in it. It's completely broken. It was commissioned to do a job for the Conservatives. It was commissioned to be transphobic and to remove our protections, and that's what it's doing. So they're going to implement it in full. They will permanently ban all puberty blockers for trans kids. So in other words, trans kids will have their healthcare completely removed.
Wow.
There's still nothing on conversion therapy. That's for the whole community, not just for trans people.
Right.
But they're still saying that it's too complicated when countries, even countries like in South America, have been able to ban conversion therapies. Even the Catholic countries have been able to ban conversion therapy.
Right.
So, and this is just, it's just their way of getting around things. The one thing that did make me laugh is that they claim to have been the party that brought in same-sex marriage in 2013. What they don't mention is that it was a liberal conservative government, and most of the Tory MPs actually voted against it. It was carried because everybody else voted for it. So, yeah, they were in charge, but it wasn't them that did it.
That's a little misinformation, right?
It's a little misinformation. So, I mean, Kemi Badenoch, the Equalities Minister, has already pretty much said that she is gunning for us and that she would like to remove all protections and remove trans people from society. I mean, she is one of the most evil people in government.
Yeah, are you talking about Braverman?
Well, but she also, but no, Kemi Badenoch.
Oh, right. Okay.
She's the Equalities Minister. The Equalities Minister, she said with a laugh.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of hoping that with some tactical voting, we might be able to get rid of her. Now, the problem we've got with that was that the Reform Party candidate, and we're obviously looking at Reform Party to take votes off the Conservative. The Reform Party candidate in her constituency was forced to resign or was thrown out of the Reform Party yesterday because the Telegraph or the Times, I think it was the Times, uncovered some racist comments that he'd made in about 2004. Now, obviously, we can't have anybody as a candidate who is a racist. That's completely unacceptable. But for goodness sake, Reform, find somebody that you can put up against these people that are actually going to take votes from them, not just have the Tory press, because the Tory press at the moment is obviously just fine with going through all of the Reform candidates with a fine-tooth comb to try and discredit them as
they're definitely looking. Yeah, they're looking. It's unbelievable that and here's the thing, Suzie, that gets to me is that manifesto is available for everyone to read.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people don't take the time and they don't see it. And they think about, it's almost like, I don't want to use Bidenomics here by saying they're kitchen table topics. It's what's affecting you as a family. You know what I mean? But I think what people need to understand is that there are queer families, and this affects them.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, sometimes you got to look beyond your own nose, your own checkbook, your own budget, like those are the things that people are worried about. They're worried about their finances and they're worried about being able to afford a home. They're worried about, petrol prices and whatnot. But there's a bigger picture. When you are talking about people's rights and their health, I find that those are equally as important as to whether you can buy a house or put petrol in your car.
Yeah.
It's equally important. And I just want people to understand that they can go and read this for themselves about the things that the conservatives want to take away, want to gut, want to do, because I think we live in an age of clickbait. You know,
Yeah.
people just see a headline and they read the headline, they don't read the story. Nobody wants to take that extra couple of minutes to research something and see whether it's true or not.
Mhm.
But you have, like, you've done this research, you've read this manifesto, you have bullet pointed the things that mean something to our community. And I just want people to understand, because when you live in this weird scrolly social media bubble, and it's happy pride, oh look, confetti, like it's
Yeah.
there's a lot more going on, and this July 4th date is creeping up on us.
Yeah.
And that's why, I felt like I really cornered you and pushed you into a slot this week, but I want this show to be out this weekend so
Yeah.
that people can listen to it. And even if they find they need to do their own research, then fine, fucking do it. But,
Yeah.
don't dismiss everything because, like you said, the polls are showing this and the polls are showing that, and everybody gets complacent and thinks, well, I don't need to do it. You can vote by mail here. You know what I mean? I know it's relatively new, but my wife, my friends, they vote by mail. Or you can go to your polling station. Every freaking school and church has a polling station in it here.
Yeah.
Find yours, go do it. It takes 2 seconds. It's not like your lines are wrapped around the block like they are in America, where you got to bring food and water and a chair. So, I mean, you guys, like, you literally can get like biscuits and tea when you go.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
so like, it's amazing to me that people would even entertain the thought of sitting it out.
Yeah.
I can't. And we can't afford for anybody to do that, to sit out, especially people that I mean, I think allies, there's that meme that constantly goes around: don't tell somebody you love them and then vote to have their rights taken away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
right? It's like you see it so much that it doesn't even, you just go right past it. Like, yep, seen that. Yep, seen that last year. Yep, seen that in 2016. Yep, seen that in 2020. But it's true. And people need to take that stuff into account. We're talking about an entire community that's affected by this, and a
Yeah.
big, broad one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of letters in our little moniker, you know
Mm.
what I mean? And it affects lesbians and gays and bisexuals and non-binary people, and every different kind of letter in front of sexual that there is, so it affects us all. And the healthcare part of it is a huge component to it, let alone the rights. So,
Yeah.
like, I get it. And I really wish that there was, I mean, I want this election to happen, but I wish that we would have had a pride function or some pride functions before it, where you could have a stall and you could be educating people, like you said, instead of just shouting into the void. It's educating them. So that's where I think people like you are so important.
You know what? It's so hard to believe that, like, you just can never relax, like, that they would be backpedaling like this and going backwards. Like, you would think you got these rights. We have the rights out there. Like, now all of a sudden there's groups that want to take them away. It's like
There's
you
a
can't
big,
ever relax that it's set and now that's the way it is. Like,
especially now, it
that's
seems
scary. Yeah.
there's this wave of far right extremism that's weaving its way through country after country. I mean, look what just happened in France, snap election. Like, it happened in Italy. You got like the female version of Trump running Italy now. And it's like it's literally sweeping its way across the states. But I'm just saying, it's really becoming this tidal wave, and I think it's just up to the people that want a democracy, and they want rights for everybody, um to stand up and fight right now, because we can't let this action, continue. It's absolutely
Yeah.
ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
I mean, that's horrible to think that they would stop trans people from getting their hormones. Like, that's just like not giving people their medicine, their
Yeah.
medication. Like, to
What did they
just,
consider, Susie, the age where you said they were going to cut off puberty blockers for trans kids? What is the age? Is it 18 here?
18.
Is
Yeah.
it 18? Okay. So
Yeah.
that's, I don't know. We talked about this the other night with Kaiwa about Jazz Jennings and being so incredibly self-aware at such a young age,
Yep.
and fortunately had the most supportive parents to
yeah,
to say, if you feel this way, you know what I mean, then we will support whatever it is that you need to do. And I mean, I remember seeing interviews with her saying that she knew at the age of 6, she
Yeah.
knew at the age of 9, she knew at the age of 11. And I think that
yeah,
was around when she went to her parents, like 11, 12 years old. And,
Yeah.
they stood behind her and said, like, the story hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Here we are. So it's important.
It really is. I mean, I think that the whole thing seems to have come out of that kind of fundamentalist Christian thinking that were really pissed when they failed to stop gay marriage happening, and now they're determined that they're going to get back at us. And trans people was just the wedge issue that they found, and that's unfortunate, because it has made a lot of people, and there's a lot of people in the trans community that are struggling with their mental health at the best of times.
Definitely.
And to have these kind of attacks, it's caused a lot of depression, severe depression and despair, and a lot of people have taken their own lives because of it.
Right.
And the problem with
that feeling of safety, like
yeah,
I can't imagine, wanting to go get a kebab across the street and feeling so unsafe that I can't do it. I can't step outside my home. I can't do things unless I'm in a group. I can't, I mean, it's this, it's the stuff of nightmares. It really is. And the amount of deaths that number just keeps, whether it's a murder, a suicide, the amount of death, just because of someone being who they are, being their authentic selves. It's unbelievable.
It's weird, isn't it? Because it's a community that have always been discriminated against.
Yeah.
And have never really done anything to hurt anybody.
yeah,
And it wasn't really until the gender recognition, the kind of self-ID thing back in, what was it, 2018, 2019, something like that.
Yeah, recent.
They tried to bring that in, and suddenly it's almost like people woke up who wanted to oppose us. The Christian nationalists, the Christian fundamentalists woke up and went, wait a minute, this is a moment that we have to stop. And then they rose up against us and decided they were going to stop it. And unfortunately, we've gone from being a target of the culture wars to try and distract people from government incompetence to the target of some very, very obsessed people who have, it's become their life's work to destroy us. And it feels very weird that somebody could hate a group of people who've never hurt them, and they've probably never met.
Right.
So much.
Right.
And the problem, of course, with targeting trans kids is that if you wait until somebody's 18 before you allow them any hormones, they have already been through a puberty, and they have developed. I've heard quite a lot of people say, "Oh, well, you can just have surgery," but the problem is you can't have surgery you can't lose 3 inches in height.
Right.
And when you're 6'2", you're going to out yourself, because no, women just aren't 6'2".
Right.
So if you're a 6'2" man with broad shoulders, and suddenly you're trying to take hormones and blockers, they're never going to redefine. If you've got size 11 feet, all of these things happen while you are happen during puberty.
Right.
Yeah.
Your voice deepens, you grow a beard, and that costs thousands and thousands. Even the things that you can fix cost
Yeah.
tens of thousands of
Right.
pounds
I was
to
just going to say, like, you know, there's the percentage, you know, of entitled, wealthy people that can have their foreheads chiseled and their Adam's apple, you know,
Right. Yeah.
electrolysis that goes along with it. I mean, not everybody's a Caitlyn Jenner, you know.
No.
Right.
So
Right.
it's
Exactly.
it's soul destroying, you know,
Yeah.
it's soul destroying to begin with. But again, taking away a person's right to it is
Mm,
just as soul destroying,
yeah.
you know, taking away you know, a kid's right to be able to make that decision when they know this is who they are, you know,
Yeah.
whether they have parents consent or support, you know, the fact that that's not on the table anymore is
Yeah.
what we're facing, you know.
Okay. I think this is, I mean, the fact that the Tories took away the NHS blockers was bad enough, but
Yes,
now they're going after the private GPs as well.
right.
So effectively, they're taking away any avenue that these kids can find blockers.
Yeah,
And for
it's
what? I
opening
mean,
it
they're
up.
saying that there is no evidence. They're saying that they think they're dangerous. Well, they're still prescribing them to cisgendered kids who are going through precocious puberty. So if a cisgendered child is going through an early puberty and they want to delay that puberty, these things are still being prescribed to those children. So they're obviously not dangerous for cisgendered kids, but
Right,
they are apparently for trans kids.
right.
So this is where we're saying this is just discrimination. There's
Yeah.
no science behind this at all. It's pure discrimination.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
No science behind it. And yet they're gonna stand there and say that it, you know, they and the thing of it is like you can read all these things in the manifesto, but
mm,
they never back anything with a logical reason
no,
or science or, you know, on the advice of, you know, never. So it
no,
really does come back to those Christian fundamental values that they think everybody should have, you
yeah,
know. And that's the thing, is that, like, if you think about wars and you know, all this strife going on in the Middle East, it's been going on forever, and it comes down to religion. And my
Mm-hmm.
God's better than your God. My, you know what I mean? Like, my beliefs are better than your beliefs. And that is exactly what's happening here. When it's like so steeped into government now that it's up to us to flush it out,
yeah.
you know?
Well, I think the part of the problem is we've got people like the Heritage Foundation in the States that are funding a lot of these politicians now. So people like Liz Truss, Kemi Badenoch, they're being funded by these organizations. Who, I mean, I was watching John Oliver last night talking about the US elections, and it really scary stuff
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they are planning kind of from day one, and
Mhm.
these are the people that are paying the UK politicians. I mean, Liz Truss went over and was speaking at a Heritage Foundation event not so very long ago. So you can
Yeah.
see where all these ideas are coming from,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and it's pretty vile.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but the problem is, it's not just the Tories. So, and some Labour MPs now, Wes Streeting, who is the Labour Health Secretary, Shadow Health Secretary, has agreed that he will implement the Cass report when should Labour get in. So now I met Wes Streeting about 2 years ago at an event, and I sat down with him and I asked him about trans people and trans rights, and he promised me. He looked into my eyes and he promised me that trans rights were safe with him. And in the last 12 months, he has gone back on those promises. The things that he's saying are really, really horrible. So there are definitely gender critical people in the Labour Party. I mean, we know about Rosie Duffield
Right.
being extremely transphobic, but there are Labour frontbench cabinet ministers or shadow cabinet ministers that are transphobic as well. There are a lot of people who have the ear of Keir Starmer and Keir Starmer himself. has been saying some things that are a bit worrying for trans people. Now, what we're hoping with him is that he's saying these things because he does not want to give the Tory client media the opportunity to shred him, to come after him and savage him for things that he's saying. Now, I know a lot of people in the trans community are hoping this is true, but there's also a lot of people in the trans community that have given up and are saying, well, we're going to vote for someone else. So he's walking a very, very fine line. But I think we have to trust that he is just trying to make sure that Labour get elected.
Seal the deal, right? Exactly.
And then, yeah, and then we can see what happens. We've got to trust that. I think a year ago we all felt that Labour was our saviour. They were going to be coming over the hill. And I was speaking to a friend who's very politicized, very radicalized, trans advocate, trans activist a couple of days ago, saying, and they were saying, no one's coming over the hill to save us. And if they've given up, then I know a lot of other people will have done. So it's a very dangerous time. It feels like a very dangerous time for us at the moment.
Yeah.
But I mean, Labour have definitely said some positive things in the manifesto. They've definitely said they're going to bring in the ban on conversion therapy, and that's trans inclusive. That's for everyone, which is great. This is something that we've been trying to get done for a very long time. It feels like it's a relatively low bar that we have set.
Yeah.
On what does the community want? Because I think for a long time, for the last election, all we said for any party was we want conversion therapy banned and we want self-ID brought in. And those were that wasn't very much that we were asking for. I think this time we're asking for non-binary identities to be recognized in law. Mm-hmm. I think we want parties to be doing something about the staggering rise in transphobic, homophobic, lesbophobic,
right,
hate crime. And I think the important thing there is we don't just want them to be increasing sentences, because that's shutting the door after the horse is bolted. We need some kind of education program. We need queer lives, trans lives, non-binary lives to be taught in school. We need some kind of program where kids are learning about these things, so that it's not a surprise for them when they encounter a trans person or a queer person.
Or it's not fearful, because I always say, fear drives hate out of ignorance, Yeah. JD, I know you have a rehearsal tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to have to hop off, but thank you so much, Suzie, for sharing this information. I really wish you guys the best for July 4th. I hope
thank you. Right.
Scary time. So,
well, it's us now. It's going to be you in a few months. So,
this is a learning experience.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to hop off, guys.
I love to the band. See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So I think we need to be focusing on education, and the people that are caught, we certainly need to have tougher sentences, but we need to have a police force that we can go and talk to about these things and that will believe us.
Right.
So
it's like we're missing I don't want to use the word mouthpiece, the liaison. We're missing a liaison to bring those things into government, if you will, like you said, the police, but also to MPs and to councils, and we're missing that step where programs are in place, and can be funded, and a big part of it comes down to education and programs, and like I said, I firmly believe that if there's a lot of stuff that doesn't get taught at home, to kids, and then to make that worse is that the parents never had any education, and the parents are ignorant, and it's just this endless cycle of ignorance and not wanting to know and holding your hands up, and it's so frustrating. It really is, because like I said, I mean, it's happening in the States, it's happening here, it's happening everywhere, you know, and I know that there's no quick answers to anything, but it all starts with like an idea, you know what I mean? And like there's got to be people that have these ideas and are willing, you know, to like you said, speak into the void kind of,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know, but it takes listeners. It takes listeners too.
it really does. And I think that um, I mean there are definitely some parties that are listening. And I think it's important for people to go and find out what everyone's saying. Actually, Pink News are doing a pretty good job
I love
of
them. Yes, I
of
follow them.
taking out all of
Noise.
the things, all of the issues, all of the LGBT issues from each of the manifestos. So if anybody's not sure what each of the different parties is standing for, I would advise people to go and have a look at Pink News.
That's a yeah, good resource.
Yeah, because they've got, I think they've done every party except the SNP at the moment.
Oh,
So if you want to go
wow.
and find
Yeah.
out, and that includes Plaid Cymru, Greens, all of the so-called smaller parties, as well
Mhm.
as the 2 or 3 main parties.
What is your understanding of the smaller parties? Because I know how we feel about the independents in the States, that they just fuck everything up. You know, we got two clear front runners, and the margin is so small that it's going to come down to people that, if they're undecided, you know, because like I always think when you're a week out, you know who you're voting for, but it doesn't feel that way here in the UK. I feel like people are figuring it out up until the last second.
Yeah.
Do you have that feeling? Like I get
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think some people probably don't know who they're going to vote for when they go into the booth, and they sit down and they go, okay, this one.
Oh,
But I don't understand that
yeah,
philosophy. I mean, let's face it, as queer people, we are politicized, and
right.
anybody who says they don't understand politics, or they don't feel as though politics has got anything for them, for goodness sake. I mean, if you're any kind of minority,
Yeah.
if you live in the countryside, if you live in the city, if you live near a phone mast, if you want clean water, any of these things is a political thing. All of us have been politicized at some point, and if you don't vote, then you leave the field open for other people to decide.
Hmm.
Um, and
And then
that
you have
decision
no right to sit around and complain.
and well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that. So to kind of go back to your question, I think the small parties are really important. I mean, I think we know that the Liberal Democrats they're polling about 11% at the moment, I think, on average. So they will get some seats. They I mean, it might be 20, it might be 40 seats, and it could be that they will be the main opposition to or the main likelihood of these of getting rid of a Tory candidate or a Tory
Hmm.
sitting MP
Hmm.
in quite a lot of seats. Now, I know that they have decided not to spend money everywhere. They're being very strategic and spending their money only in the places where they think they might win. So if you've got a Lib Dem candidate that finished second last time around, or is polling second, and you're a Labour supporter, you need to be voting tactically. You need to be getting behind the party, whichever party it is, apart from the Reform Party, of course.
Right.
Whichever party. So if it's the Liberal Democrats, if it's the Greens, no, the Greens will probably return an MP down in Brighton. Whichever party it is, if it's Liberal Democrats, Labour, or the Greens, then vote for that party. Whoever's got the best chance of unseating a Tory MP, that's what
Yeah.
we need to be voting for. So if we get a Tory MP and they've got less than 40 or less than 50% of the vote, then effectively everybody else has voted for multiple parties, and we could have got rid of a Tory, and
Right.
that would be a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are
Right.
definitely some Tories that we want to see the back of. We need to see the back of. I mean, I would love to see Sunak lose his seat. That would be fantastic. but
Yeah.
Kemi Badenoch, Braverman, Keegan, Miriam Cates, all of these people, that we need to be getting rid of them because they're extremists.
Yes. Yeah. They've got that far right extremist mentality, and they have no problem, saying it. You know what I mean? Because we live in a society now where that's like, ooh, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
You want to say hateful things? That's all right. You're right.
Yeah.
Free speech.
That,
It's not okay.
it's not okay because they own. The other thing that they will do, and you can guarantee they will do this if the Tories get back in, is they will withdraw the UK from the European Court of Human Rights. And if they do that,
That's a big thing.
it's not just about queer people and trans people. That is about everyone, because that is, I mean, the European Convention on Human Rights, that is the thing that promises fair elections. It's the thing that promises that you will have your rights to health and employment law, and I mean, there are so many things that governs.
If you think about
the laws on protest,
human rights encompasses, I mean, your protections, your fair trials, all that kind of stuff. It's deep. It runneth deep, and you
really
cannot be without.
If they get to withdraw us from that and they get to rewrite it themselves, we are done. We are, I mean, that effectively we become a rogue state. And the reason why is that the European Convention on Human Rights was written after the Second World War to stop countries from treating their own people like the Nazis treated the German people in the 1930s and 40s. I can't state enough how important it is that when they're not allowed to do this. This is why the Tories need to be completely eviscerated, because if they are destroyed entirely, they will have to stop and think again, and if they rebuild, they will have to rebuild in a different way, in a more sympathetic way. Because if they're allowed to rebuild as they are, then they will come back next time.
It'll be worse. Yeah.
It'll be worse.
Yeah, it'll be worse. It's absolutely imperative, that people understand what's at stake. And it's not just I think some people just kind of like they've become immune. And their biggest concerns are their work week, their childcare, like things like that. Like it's become such a me, I society that, I think the magic word you just said is you need a party that has some sympathies, some empathy, that sees, the hope in humanity, as opposed to crushing it out and and building this weird far right, authoritarian state. And it's just, we're like a finger snap away from it. And elections are the things that matter, are the things that do it. So I feel like, don't get me wrong, because I love my gay brothers. I do. I love the gay part of LGBTQ. I love them, but sometimes I think that they are all about the fun and games, and their status and their influence and their, fine, do I have enough money to go out this weekend? Like that kind of thing. And they're not looking at big picture stuff, because I mean, let's not beat around the bush. Like entitled white guys, don't have a lot to worry about. They just don't. So if they're community driven, I feel like they'll get it. But if not, like someone's got to wake them up, wake them up and say, look, you can get to the pub, you can get to the club, but just go vote first. You know what I mean? Like go vote.
I mean, I agree. I mean, it does feel like as a community, we stopped being, or a lot of the community stopped being political after we got gay marriage, because that was almost
the work was done.
The
Yeah,
work was done.
yeah. I'm
And I think
topless now.
there's a reason why most of the chief executives of Stonewall recently have been women, have been lesbians,
Right.
because they
It's
are
it's
still
dumb.
fighting,
Yeah.
because there is still work to be done.
Oh God, yeah.
And I
It's
think one of the great things, okay, so I think what's happened to the trans community has been horrible. But one of the things that it has done is that it's radicalized us, it's politicized us, and it's meant that we are starting to organize.
mhm.
And and I think this will be the legacy of this generation. I always thought our generation, that our job was to hand on better rights and equalities to the next generation than we inherited from ours. And
Right.
I now don't think that's necessarily possible, because I think we don't have any representation. There are no trans people. Well, okay, so there's one in Parliament, but he's a Tory and he's never voted outside of the Tory whip. So
Yeah.
um, I
I
think
feel
that,
that way. Like, I don't understand
yeah,
why there's gay Republicans. Like, I
well,
don't.
I know. So we've got no representation. We've got no voice. So I think creating the lobby groups, creating the organisations that can train other people in what to say, that we can teach people about trans people, we can teach people about um, how to be political. And I think that is going to be our legacy, to make sure that the next generation doesn't start from scratch. The next generation starts with a group that can put some political pressure onto the people that we need to put it onto, and also to create and choose people that can be the next generation of trans politicians. And we're
Mhm,
starting to see those people in the States now.
mhm, mhm.
Zooey Zephyr, for example.
Yes.
But there aren't any in the UK. And we had Eddie Izzard try, Susie Izzard, I think they're happy with both. She's happy with both.
Right.
Try to be selected as a Labour MP and not make it either of the times. And if somebody who's been on the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party can't be selected as a Labour MP because they're trans, then it's not going to happen for us just yet. But
Right.
in the next generation, it might. But we need to be able to identify those people now and say, right, these are the people that will be able to do that. And I think because we're becoming more politicized, and because we're standing up and starting to say, wait a minute, this is me. Somebody like Eva Echo, I can see being a great MP, because she's politicized. She knows what to say. She's got an extraordinary ability to take people on the journey with her, and people follow her.
Yeah.
Um, and I would certainly vote for Eva. I mean, she's an extraordinary person. I mean,
Yeah.
she's a friend of mine, but so I think I'm probably a bit biased, but a little
But
bit.
no, I think
But
you recognize, like, when someone is influential, but also using that for good, and knowing the nuances and how to speak
yeah,
to people and educate them and inform
completely.
them.
Completely. But I think we have to be in the room when our lives are discussed, and we're not at the moment. There's no trans people in the room when trans lives are discussed, and that's got to be the target that we set,
Mhm.
because otherwise we end up with what we've got at the moment. We end up with a government that's able to parachute their people into all of the policy making positions,
Right.
and then the policy changes, which is, I mean, Kemi Badenoch has said that policy changed when she managed to put all of the gender critical people in the positions that she needed to put them. So we need to have somebody that can talk for us with
Mhm.
trans lived experience, and until we have that, we have no power.
Right. I 100% agree with that. I really do. It's, I watched when I was back in Florida recently, um I get a very different CNN than what we have here. Because what we have here, whether it's digital or whatever, it's the international, um, feed. So when I'm there and I'm watching regular CNN, in the evenings they have Anderson Cooper does stories, and he did one on what it's like to be a trans athlete, from the perspective of parents and that student, that is trying, so hard. And it was so well done because it was every perspective, including the board that makes those decisions and why they're making those decisions. And that's part of, again, I think we become desensitized
Mm.
to things. And that means we stop listening. So even though we know what our points are and we've educated ourselves or whatever, to talk to somebody and hear why they want this rule in place, allows you to open up to counter, with, well, here's what we think, kind of thing. And it was an amazing dialogue. And I was like, why is this just limited to the States? Like, why can't I get this over there? Or how can I? And I know there's ways, like I'm sure there's ways on CNN to listen to past shows or as podcasts now and all that. But for me, it was even the doctors. They even, spoke with the doctors, and it was just, I just think if there were more outlets and avenues to educate people on these kinds of things, that it wouldn't be such a stunted conversation when it does come up, It's just heartbreaking that this hate has just been unleashed, um, and it's just fueled, and that makes me crazy.
Yeah, it's difficult. I think the thing is that anybody who's studied any kind of LGBT history will recognize that it's just the history repeating itself. I mean, this is just what happened in the 70s, 60s, and 70s.
Yeah.
Around with gay men and lesbians. And bisexual people, probably that came a little bit later, because I think it was really, bisexuality wasn't really understood back then. It was mainly focused around kind of gay men and lesbians.
Right. It was like two categories and that was it. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so there was a lot of almost all of the tropes that are aimed at trans people now were aimed at gay and lesbian people back then. And I mean, you look at someone like a lot of the gay men who have got social media presences, someone like Matthew Hodson, who's the AIDS campaigner, will regularly say, I saw this in 1980, I saw this in 1985. This is exactly the same thing that's coming about. So if you know your gay history, or you know your queer history, then you can see what's going on. What surprised me?
Yeah, it's exactly. Like a repeated pattern coming up, right?
What surprised me is that we weren't ready for this to happen. It feels like we were caught off guard. So we were maybe just because we were partying for 20 years.
Comfortable.
Comfortable. Yeah, right. So we always tried, let's party.
Yeah.
And while we were doing that, all these right-wing organizations were taking a very long view, and they were saving and they were funding their candidates and putting them in position so that at some point all of these sleepers can go, okay, right, now we're ready. And suddenly we were sitting there and we're going, oh my God, we're completely overwhelmed because all of these people are in position. They're all in policy-making positions.
Yeah.
And suddenly with Trump in 2016, you had the switch where you had this puppet that they could control. And thankfully, I guess, it took them by surprise and they weren't ready. So a lot of the things they would have done didn't happen. Now they won't be caught out like that next time. And they're obviously preparing the UK. The one thing about the UK is that the right wingers were already in government. So they're able to enact a lot of the things. So a lot of the things that are happening in US states are happening in the UK as kind of countrywide, because kind of when you've got Republican state, you've got a right-wing state, we've got a right-wing government. If I think a lot of the stuff they wanted to do, they've run out of time for. But if the Conservatives get elected again, then it will be open season.
Yeah,
It will
exactly.
be absolutely horrific. And once they've finished with us, once they're finished with the trans community, they won't stop. That
Right.
won't be the end of it. They will then, because the Christian nationalist, it was always their game plan to come after gay marriage. And when we've seen with women's bodily autonomy, with abortion rights in the
Yes.
US, they will come after everything else.
Yeah, that's the sad part, is that it's like fuels, their wins fuel them, to get bigger
Yeah,
and bigger and bigger. So
yeah,
I just think that I'm glad that we're having this conversation. Like I said, I think it's so important. We're on the cusp of a fucking meltdown,
we
like an
completely are.
absolute,
Yeah,
yeah, like it's gonna be a clusterfuck, everywhere. So these conversations are conversations that, oh, it's so fun to get together and have cocktails and hors d'oeuvres and hang out with our friends and have game night or whatever. But these are conversations right now that are so important in the run up to this July 4th election,
yeah.
that sometimes you just got to put the fun stuff aside for a second and have a serious moment with your friends and just
Mm.
say, like, are we all on the same page here? Like, is everybody, where are you at with this? And just check in with your friends and make sure, have a plan, like, if you know somebody that needs, 20 quid to take an Uber to their polling station, fucking give it to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There are
absolutely.
no excuses. Make a plan, help friends with their plan. But, we can't sit on our asses. You can't sit this one out. And I'm saying this as a person who can't vote here. You know what I mean?
And oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, I just
But it
have
matters. But it matters,
indefinite.
doesn't it? I mean, because it matters to people that you care about as well. So
That's just it. And that's the thing. It really, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter if you're straight, because I guess it does. I guess, they think differently and there's things, other things that are important to them.
mm,
But the fact of the matter is if you peel it back a little bit, there's probably somebody from our community that they love,
yeah,
or that they're friends with, or that's important to them in some way. And, you have to just say, I hope that they take that into consideration. There are things that are important to you and your family. But, there's a bigger picture to be had here. And I'm really glad that you had time tonight to just explain the things, that are at stake, and,
yeah,
how very important it is, um,
yeah.
in the next couple of weeks to, do the research, get your shit together, make a plan, and there are no excuses to not go vote,
No,
very
no,
important.
brilliant. And I think one thing that is a good thing to remember is that there are a few websites that are that will advise you on how to tactically vote. So if you want to get rid of the Tory candidate, go and look at these websites, and they will tell you which candidate in your constituency is the most likely one to be able to unseat the Tory. And okay, so there might be a lot of people who've never voted anything but Labour.
Mhm.
But if a Liberal Democrat candidate is the most likely candidate to unseat a Tory MP, vote Lib Dem.
Right.
If you're a Lib Dem and the Labour candidate is the most likely to get rid of a Tory candidate, vote Labour or vote Green in Brighton. If whichever candidate is
Mhm.
the most likely to get rid of that Tory, go vote for that candidate. Doesn't matter if you're always voted for one party. If you're a partisan voter, this time you need to vote tactically.
And we're like we were saying, how Pink News is listing those kinds of things. So that's a great resource right there. But what if someone, like, say I was able to vote, I wouldn't even know how to find out. Is it like an area thing? Like, how would you find out how to unseat a Tory?
Well, as I said, there will be a website. You can go and look, see what the voting was in your constituency last time. If you put
Right.
your constituency in, or put your postcode in, and say something like, "What's the voting in my postcode last time,
Right.
last election?" There should be a site somewhere that will tell you. But
Okay.
obviously, we know there has been a massive swing to the Labour Party over the last 12 months, 2
Right.
years.
Yes.
So I would say put in how do I unseat my local Tory MP into Google, or tactical voting for this election, for the 2024 general election, something like that. And that
Yep.
will give you a website where you can put your postcode in and it will tell you what the voting is looking like in your local constituency. Then you can make a decision based on that. But I think tactical voting is going to be really important. If we're going to get rid of some of the really big hitters, if we're going to get rid of Rishi Sunak, if we're going to get rid of Kemi Badenoch, because they've got massive majorities, they've got 20, 30,000 majorities. The only way to unseat those people, and these are really dangerous people, and the Tory health minister, if we're going to get rid of them, we have to vote tactically. So everyone has to get behind one candidate. It might be somebody that you're not particularly fond of normally, but
or familiar with, right?
Or familiar with,
right.
Go vote for them.
Right.
But also, if your party comes and knocks on the door, ask them some questions. I've got some questions actually. I don't know whether you've got time that I can read out.
Yeah, because that just happened the other day, and I just, I was fortunate. My wife wasn't home, but I was fortunate enough to say, I can't vote in this election, so I don't want to waste your time. Boom.
Yeah.
But Jesus, now that I think about it, I probably should have.
Yeah, well,
hear what they have to say.
It's interesting because it gives you a chance to find out what your local candidate is doing.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, I know I've just said you should get behind one candidate, but it will help to find out what people think.
Yeah.
So
before you even start, I'm gonna quickly advise to don't do your research through your neighborhood Facebook group, because it's literally just opinions.
Yeah.
No factual anything. So take that off the list as a way to do this. So go ahead, tell me what to do when that person comes knocking on my door.
Okay, so I've got 9 questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, how do you plan to ensure that the LGBT community feels safe going about their day-to-day lives, given that hate crimes against LGBT people have risen so much? Second question, if you're, wait a minute. Okay, so second question, conversion therapy is still legal in the UK. Will you commit to a comprehensive ban on conversion practices if elected? Now, we know that pretty much only the Tory party and Reform are against that.
Right.
But it would be interesting to see what individual candidates say about that. So LGBT people have poorer mental health outcomes than cis and straight people. What would you do to improve mental health services for LGBTQ people?
Good one.
Question 5. LGBTQ people, it's getting late. Oh, wait a minute, I've got that question twice. Trans adults are waiting on average 4 years for treatment. Actually, this can go up to 20 years at the moment, but it can. How do you ensure that all trans people can access the healthcare they need? And this includes trans youth. That might get a range of different answers, but let's see. Many LGBTQ plus people still face financial barriers to accessing IVH on the NHS. What will you do to make sure that every queer and trans person has the chance to start a family?
Oh, wow.
Okay, penultimate one. I believe that LGBTQ plus inclusive education is important. What will you do to ensure this is protected in schools? And finally, the UK used to be the highest rated for LGBTQ equality. We're now rated 16th. What steps would you take to ensure that the UK once again regains its #1 status for LGBT equality? So those are all kind of questions.
Those are good. Oh my God.
If they come and sit on your doorstep and say, I'm your local candidate, would you vote for me? So I think it's good to interrogate them.
Yes. Very, very smart move. That would be amazing, because they are out. They're out in full force. They know it's important. So yeah, like you said, let's get some answers. Let's push and see where they stand on certain things.
as
It's,
they
it's
say.
incredible. That's a really, really great, great. That's really good advice. I mean, we need to know things like this. Like I said, this is just it's way too important. Suzie, thank you a million times over. I know it's late here. I know that you've it's busy. It's Pride Month, for God's sake. So I know. So I'm gonna let you go. But again, a million thank yous for doing this. Like I said, it's so important, and I'm so glad that you are like me and understand the importance and what we need to do. What we definitely need to do. So appreciate it. And I'll see you on the socials.
You will. Denise,
Okay.
thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
I thank you so much for your smarts on these things. Thank you. Okay, have a great night. Bye.
I wake up in the morning with voices in my head. I try to find a reason to get out of my bed. My mind is so distracted by what used to be a dream. The best things in life aren't always what they seem. I'll start a new page, take a new direction, dance in the rain, try some reinvention. With faith I will get through the storm. I'll find my way on my own. I'm almost home. There's a freedom in the feeling. There's nothing left to lose. And my future destination will be what I will choose. I know life can be tough. I'll be a little tougher when I see the lightning. I won't fear the thunder. I'll start a new page, take a new direction, dance in the rain, try some reinvention. With faith I will get through the storm. I'll find my way on my own. I'm almost home. Sometimes it was a hunger that kept me alive, but I've made my peace and I have survived. I'm almost home. Life can be tough. I'll be a little tougher when I see the lightning. I won't fear the thunder. I'll start a new page, take a new direction, dance in the rain, try some reinvention. With faith I will get through the storm.